I joined the Mort Cestus in San Francisco. I had heard strange stories about her, but I needed a job and couldn't be picky. People said the food and treatment were fine, but the ship was unlucky. She often had long trips, bad weather, broken masts, and moved cargo. These were common sea troubles, so I took the risk. Still, I would have preferred another ship if I had a choice. When I arrived, the rest of the crew had already signed on. The old crew left in San Francisco, except one young cockney named Williams, who stayed to collect his pay. On my first night, the others joked the ship was haunted, but Williams took it seriously. That made me curious. I asked him if he believed the ghost stories and why. At first, Williams acted cold, but soon he opened up. He said nothing strange had clearly happened, but many small things together made the ship feel odd. The Mort Cestus always had long trips, storms, calms, or headwinds. Sails that were properly tied would come loose at night, but he refused to explain and just shook his head. I thought he regretted speaking so openly. He probably felt foolish for mentioning the shadows. Some men think strange things but don't say them out loud. So I stopped asking. We left San Francisco with perfect wind, and it seemed like the ship's bad luck was only a story. For 2 weeks, nothing strange happened, and the good wind continued. I started to think I had been lucky to join this ship. Most of the crew said good things, and we all began to believe the ghost stories were nonsense. But then something happened that changed everything. It was the 8 to 12 watch, and I was sitting on the starboard steps near the front of the ship, enjoying the calm night and bright moon. I heard 4 bells from the back, and Jasket, the old lookout, replied. He saw me sitting and asked if it was me. I said, yes. Then he said if the sea was always this peaceful, even our grandmothers would want to come. I agreed, and he went on saying that if this ship was haunted, he wouldn't mind sailing on more like her. The food was good, there was Sunday pudding, the officers were decent, and everything felt comfortable. He thought ghost stories were nonsense. He said he had sailed on ships called Haunted before, but they weren't haunted by ghosts, only full of pests. One ship had so many that you couldn't sleep until you searched your whole bunk. Just then, another sailor came up to take his place, and Jasket asked why he was late. I didn't hear the answer, because I saw something shocking at the back of the ship, a man climbing. Aboard over the starboard rail near the main rigging. I stood up, grabbed the rail, and stared. Then I heard someone behind me. It was Jasket, heading aft to report his relief to the second mate. "What is it, mate?" the old sailor asked, when he saw how serious I looked. The thing I had seen had already vanished into the shadows on the lee side. "Nothing," I said quickly, too confused to explain. He muttered something and walked away. I stayed there a while looking, but saw nothing. Then I walked slowly toward the back of the deckhouse and looked across the deck. The only thing moving were the shadows of ropes and sails in the moonlight. The other man had left, and I was alone. As I watched the shadows, I remembered Williams's words about there being too many shadows. I didn't understand what he meant. Now I did. There were definitely too many shadows. I had to know if what I saw climbing on board was real or just a dream. My reason told me it was imagination, but something inside said otherwise. I checked the deck, walked among the shadows. There was nothing. I felt braver. I even looked behind the mainmast and around the pumps, but still found nothing. I checked under the poop deck, where it was darker. I saw nothing there either. I realized that if anyone had climbed aboard, someone at the back would have noticed. I leaned on the wall and thought about it while smoking. "No," I said out loud. Then I said, "Unless," and looked over the side, but only saw the sea. I started to feel sure it was just my mind playing tricks. I reached the door to the forecastle and was about to go in when I turned around and froze. There was a shadowy figure standing in the moonlight behind the mainmast. It was the same thing I had thought was just in my head. I was scared now. It looked human, but the moving shadows made it hard to see clearly. I thought maybe someone was just playing a joke. I hadn't considered that before, and it made me feel better. Maybe I had overreacted, but still, I was afraid to go see who it was. I told myself I'd be a coward if I didn't, so I forced myself to go, slowly. I was halfway there, and the figure hadn't moved. I wondered if it was a joke. Why hadn't the person run off? Where had they been hiding before? These thoughts ran through my mind as I got closer, and so I had just passed the deckhouse and was only a few steps away when the silent figure suddenly moved. It took 3 quick steps to the port side and climbed over the rail into the sea. I ran to the side and looked down, but saw nothing except the ship's shadow moving across the moonlit water. I don't know how long I stared. It felt like a full minute. I felt empty, completely shocked. What I had thought was only a trick of the mind now seemed real, and that scared me. My thoughts froze, and for a moment I couldn't think clearly. I must have been in shock. After a minute, I snapped out of it. I heard the second mate shouting, "Lee full brace." I walked over to the ropes like someone in a dream. I checked the places where the strange figure had climbed aboard and left the ship, but I found nothing unusual, no sign or clue to explain what I had seen. For several days, everything stayed quiet. Still, I walked the decks at night, hoping to find something new that might explain the mystery. I didn't tell anyone what I had seen because I was sure they would just laugh. Night after night passed without answers. Then, during the middle watch, something happened. I was at the wheel, and Tammy, one of the young apprentices, was walking up and down on the lee side to keep time. The second mate stood forward, leaning over the poop, smoking. The night was clear, and the moon, though fading, still gave enough light to see clearly. 3 bells had sounded, and I was sleepy. The ship was steering easily, and I must have dozed a little. Suddenly, I thought I heard someone softly call my name. I checked the second mate still smoking, and then looked at the compass. The ship was still on course, so I relaxed. Then I heard the voice again, clearly this time. I looked to the side and saw Tammy leaning over the steering gear, reaching out as if to touch my arm. I was about to ask what he wanted, but he raised his finger to signal silence and pointed forward along the lee side of the poop. In the pale light, his face looked white, and he seemed very upset. I looked in the direction he pointed but saw nothing. "What is it?" I asked quietly after a few moments of staring without seeing anything. "I can't see a thing." "Shh," he said in a hoarse whisper, not looking at me. Then suddenly he gasped and jumped across the wheel box to stand beside me, shaking. He stared hard at something I couldn't see. I was shocked by how frightened he looked and how seriously he stared into the dark. Then I remembered the second mate. I looked toward him. He was still leaning at the front, back turned to us, and hadn't seen Tammy. I turned back to the boy. "For heaven's sake, get back to your side before the second sees you," I said. "If you want to say something, say it from there. You're dreaming." But right then, Tammy grabbed my sleeve and pointed across to the log reel, screaming, "He's coming! He's coming!" At that moment, the second mate ran toward us, shouting to know what was going on. Then, under the rail near the log reel, I saw something like a man crouching. It was blurry and strange, almost not real. But it reminded me instantly of the figure I'd seen a week ago in the moonlight. The second mate reached me, and I pointed, not speaking. Still, I knew somehow he wouldn't see it. Strange, wasn't it? Then, in an instant, it was gone. Tammy was hugging my knees. The second looked for a second longer, then turned to me with a sneer. "Asleep, both of you, I guess," he said. Without waiting for a reply, he told Tammy to get off the poop or he'd kick him. Then he went forward, lit his pipe again, and walked back and forth, sometimes giving me a look that seemed both doubtful and confused. Later, when my shift ended, I rushed to the apprentice's room. I wanted to talk to Tammy. I had many questions and wasn't sure what to do. I found him sitting on a sea chest, hugging his knees, staring at the door in fear. When I appeared, he gasped, then relaxed a little. "Come in," he said softly, trying to sound calm. I stepped in and sat across from him. "What was it?" he asked, putting his feet on the floor and leaning forward. "Please tell me what it was." His voice grew louder and I raised my hand. "Shh," I warned. "You wake the others." He repeated the question more quietly. I hesitated. Maybe I should pretend nothing had happened. Maybe that was safer. So I decided quickly and said, "What do you mean? What was it?" "That's what I came to ask you. You made us both look silly with your panic up on deck." I said it in an annoyed tone. "I didn't," he whispered fiercely. No, I didn't. You saw it too. You even pointed it out to the second mate." "Nonsense," I said. "You were sleeping during your watch. You dreamed something and woke up suddenly. You were confused." I wanted to calm him down, though honestly I needed calming too. What if he knew about that strange thing I saw on the main deck? "I wasn't asleep any more than you were," he said bitterly. "And you know that. You're just joking with me. The ship is haunted." "What?" I said sharply. "It's haunted," he repeated. I do. And everyone knows it. Though they only half believe it, I didn't believe it until tonight." "Nonsense," I said again. "That's just an old sailor's story. The ship isn't haunted any more than I am." "It's not nonsense," he said, clearly not convinced. "And it's not an old sailor's story. Why won't you say you saw it?" he asked, almost crying with excitement, raising his voice again. I told him not to wake the others. "Why won't you admit you saw it?" he repeated. I got up from the chest and went to the door. "You're a young fool," I said, "and I advise you not to go talking like this on deck. Take my advice. Go to bed and sleep. You're acting crazy. Tomorrow you'll see how foolish you've been." I think he followed me to say something more, but I was already halfway forward. For the next few days, I avoided him as much as I could, making sure he never caught me alone. I wanted to convince him he was wrong about what he thought he saw that night. But soon it became clear that it was useless. It happened during the first watch, just after 6 bells. I was sitting forward on the forehatch. No one was on the main deck. The night was very calm and the wind had almost stopped, so the ship was very quiet. Suddenly, I heard the second mate's voice. "In the main rigging. Who is going up there?" I sat up and listened carefully. Then everything became very quiet. After a moment, the second mate's voice came again. He sounded angry. "Do you hear me? What are you doing up there? Come down." I stood up and walked towards the windward side. From there, I could see the break of the poop deck. The second mate was standing by the starboard ladder. He was looking up at something hidden by the topsails which I couldn't see. Then he shouted again, "Damn you! Come down when I tell you!" He stamped his foot and shouted harshly. But there was no answer, and I started to walk aft, confused. What was happening? What was happening? Who had gone up there? Who would be foolish enough to go without permission? Suddenly, I thought about the figure Tammy and I had seen before. Had the second mate seen someone? I hurried forward, then stopped suddenly. At the same time, I heard the sharp whistle of the second mate calling the watch. I turned and ran to the forecastle to wake the men. After a minute, I was hurrying aft with them to see what was going on. His voice met us halfway. "Some of you go quickly up the mainmast and find out who that fool is up." There, see what trouble he is causing. And a couple of them climbed into the weather rigging. I joined them, and the others started to follow. But the second mate shouted for some to go up on the leeward side in case the man tried to escape. That way, as I followed the two men up the mast, I heard the second mate tell Tammy, who was keeping time, to come down to the main deck with the other apprentice and watch the fore and aft stays. He might try to escape that way if he is trapped, the second mate said. Well, the second mate asked sharply. Nothing, sir, Tammy said, and went down to the main deck. The first man going windward reached the futtock shrouds. His head was above the top, and he looked carefully before climbing higher. See anything, Jock? Asked Plummer, the man above me. No, Jock answered shortly, climbed over the top, and disappeared from my sight. The man in front of me followed. He stopped to spit, then looked down at me. What is going on? He asked. What did he see? Who are we chasing? I said I didn't know, and he climbed higher into the topmast rigging. I followed. The men on the leeward side were about level with us. Below the foot of the topsail, I could see Tammy and the other apprentice on the main deck, looking up. The men were quietly excited, curious, and aware that something strange was happening. Looking to leeward, they stayed close together, and I felt the same. Must be a bloomin' stowaway, one of the men suggested. I quickly liked the idea. Maybe, but then I rejected it. I remembered how that strange figure had stepped over the rail into the sea. That couldn't be explained that way. This time, I was curious and nervous. I hadn't seen anything. What could the second mate have seen? Were we chasing ghosts, or was there really someone, something real up in the shadows? My mind went back to the thing Tammy and I had seen near the log reel. I remembered how the second mate couldn't see it then. It seemed natural he shouldn't see it. The word stowaway came to me again. Maybe that would explain this. I see him, one man shouted, pointing up over our heads. Where? Asked the man above me. Where? I looked up as hard as I could. I felt a little relieved. I felt a little relieved. It's real then, I thought. Too. I turned my head and looked along the yards above us. Still, I could see nothing, just shadows and patches of light. Down on deck, I heard the second mate's voice. Have you got him? He shouted. Not yet, sir. The man on the lee side shouted back. We see him, sir, added Quoin. I don't, I said. There he is again, Quoin said, pointing up to the royal yard. You're a fool, Quoin. That's what you are. A voice came from above. It was Jock, and the men laughed at Quoin. I could see Jock now. He was standing in the rigging just below the yard. He had climbed straight up, while the rest of us were still hanging at the top. You're a fool, Quoin, he said again. So, there's no one? I asked. No, he said briefly. When we reached the deck, the second mate ran down from the poop deck. He came towards us looking serious. Have you got him? He asked confidently. There was no one, I said. What? He almost shouted. You're hiding something, he said angrily, looking at each of us. Tell me, there's no one up there. The second mate looked around us. Am I a fool? He asked with contempt. No one answered. I saw him myself, he said. He said, Tammy saw him too. He wasn't over the top when I first saw him. No mistake. It's nonsense to say he's not there. Well, he's not, sir, I answered. Jock climbed right up to the royal yard. The second mate said nothing at first, but walked a few steps aft and looked up the mainmast. Then he turned to the two apprentices. Are you two sure you didn't see anyone coming down from the mainmast? He asked suspiciously. Yes, sir, they answered together. Anyway, I heard him say quietly, I would have seen him myself if he was there. Do you know who you saw, sir? I asked. He looked at me closely. No, he said. So even in use that. He thought for a moment while we stood quietly, waiting. By the holy poker, he said suddenly. I should have thought of that before. He looked at us one by one. Are you all here? He asked. Yes, sir, we said together. He counted us carefully. All of you stay here, he said. Tammy, go to your place and see if the others are in their bunks. The second mate turned to the other apprentice. You go forward to the forecastle, count the watch, and come back to report. The apprentice went forward. Tammy came back and told the second mate the other two apprentices were asleep in their bunks. So the second sent Tammy to check the carpenter's and sailmaker's rooms. While Tammy was gone, the other apprentice returned and said all the men were in their bunks and asleep. Are you sure? The second asked. Yes, sir, he answered. The second mate quickly told him, go check if the steward is in his berth. It was clear he was very confused. You've still got a lot to learn, Mr. Second Mate, I thought. I wondered what he would conclude. A few seconds later, Tammy returned, saying the carpenter, sailmaker, and doctor were all in bed. The second mate muttered something and told Tammy to check the saloon to see if the first and third mates were in their rooms. Tammy started to go but then stopped. Shall I check the old man's cabin, sir, while I'm down there? Tammy asked. No, said the second mate. Do exactly what I told you, then come back and tell me. And ran up to the poop deck. While Tammy was gone, the other apprentice came up to say the steward was in his berth and wanted to know why we were messing around his part of the ship. The second mate stayed silent for almost a minute. Then he turned to us and said we could go forward. As we moved forward quietly, Tammy came down from the poop and went to the second mate. I heard him say the two mates were in their berths, asleep. Then he added, as if it just occurred to him, so is the old man. I thought I told you. The second mate began. I didn't, sir, Tammy said. His cabin door was open. The second mate started walking aft. I caught part of what he said to Tammy, accounted for the whole crew. I didn't hear the rest. I waited a moment, then hurried after the others. As we reached the forecastle, one bell rang, and we woke the other watch, telling them what had happened. I reckon he must be drunk, one man said. Not him, said another. He's been napping on the break, dreaming his mother-in-law came to visit him. Kindly. They laughed, and I smiled too, although I didn't really believe it, man. Could be hell, Stubbins replied. Stowaways aren't that stupid. I don't know, said Quan. I wish I'd asked the second mate what he thought. I don't think it was a stowaway, I said. What would a stowaway want up there? I guess he'd try the steward's pantry instead. You bet he would every time, said Stubbins. He lit his pipe and smoked slowly. I still don't understand it, he added after a short silence. Neither do I said. Then I was quiet for a while, listening to the others talk about it. Soon I saw Williams, the man who had spoken about shadows. He was sitting in his bunk, smoking quietly and not joining the conversation. I went to him. What do you think about all this, Williams? I asked. Do you believe the second mate really saw something? He looked at me with a serious, suspicious look, but didn't say anything. I felt a little annoyed, but didn't show it. After a moment, I continued. Williams, I think I understand what you meant that night when you said there were too many shadows. What do you mean? He asked, surprised, pulling his pipe from his mouth. What I said. There are too many shadows, I repeated. He sat up, leaned forward, holding out his hand and pipe. His eyes showed he was excited. Well, I asked. For about a minute he tried to speak. Then his face changed from doubt to a serious, determined look. He said, I'm damned if I don't get my pay from her, shadows or no shadows. I was surprised. What does that have to do with your pay? I asked. He nodded strongly. Look here, he said. I waited. The crowd cleared, he said. pointing toward the back of the ship. You mean in San Francisco? I asked. Yes, he said, and without a cent of the pay. I stayed. I suddenly understood. You think they saw shadows, I said. He nodded, but said nothing. So they all left? I asked. He nodded again and tapped his pipe on the side of his bunk. And what about the officers and the skipper? I asked. Fresh ones, he said, getting out of his bunk as 8 bells struck.